Hello. How y'all doing today? Thank you for being here with me. I sure do appreciate it. Today, I'm going to talk about Jolene Faye Witt. The investigation into the 1997 disappearance and murder of Jolene Faye Witt attracted national attention, has never been closed, for the simple fact that there's never been an arrest. Now, the suspect in the 29-year-old Lycoming County, Pennsylvania homicide case may still be out there, according to a former detective. The murder of 10-year-old Jolene Faye Witt is one of Lycoming County's most famous cold cases that drew national interest shortly after her disappearance. Now, 15 years after her disappearance, Kenneth Maines was hired as a detective at the Lycoming County District Attorney's Office. Jolene's case was one that he was asked to review. He said he talked to witnesses and family members, and it is his opinion that the killer is still out there. So before we get into this whole story, I would like to ask you to please do me a favor, and please subscribe to my channel and hit that thumbs up. I'd greatly appreciate it. It helps me out more than you know. So, let's get into this. Let me get my stuff out of the way here because I do have to review notes because I'm getting old and my memory's not that great and I don't want to leave stuff out. So, Jolene was the daughter to Linda and Lindsay. She was described as a quiet but feisty girl. She had an 11-year-old sister, Cassie, and a 12-year-old brother, Lindsay Jr. Now, Jolene and her siblings lived with their father in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and their mother, Linda Longnecker, lived in nearby Muncie and had visitation rights with the children. I believe I read that she got the children like every other weekend and maybe like one day during the week or something like that. It really doesn't matter. But on Saturday, July 26, 1997, Jolene and her siblings visited their mother for the weekend. And at the time, their mother was living with her brother, Bruce Longnecker. So it would have been the children's uncle. And his wife, Christine, and they had 5 children, and they lived at 1 Grant Street in Muncie in Lycoming County. It was reported that the children went to sleep around 10 p.m., and the adults, they stayed up till around 2 a.m., and they were playing Scrabble and drinking. Not that that's a big deal, because it isn't. Some people might look at it. But anyway, Jolene's uncle Bruce stated to investigators that he made sure and checked twice that all the doors in the house were closed and locked. Now, the doors consisted of a front door, a back door, and a side door. Now, around 3 a.m., Christine, Bruce's wife, checked on the children and stated that everything at that time was okay. Now, to get a little bit of a concept of where everyone was in the house, where they were sleeping, I want you to pay attention to what I'm saying because this is going to come up a little bit later. So, on the first floor is where Linda, Jolene's mother, and Cassie, the sister, they were sleeping next to each other on sofas, which were in the TV room, which was by the front door, okay? So they were sleeping in the room where the front door was. Now, Bruce Jr. was in a toy room, which was next to that TV room. And Jolene's uncle, Bruce, and Christine, and their little baby, they slept upstairs in the front bedroom. And Jolene and her 6-year-old cousin, Jeannie Lynn, they were sleeping together in the same bed in a small bedroom, which was right next to Bruce and Christine's bedroom. And opposite the room where Jolene was another small bedroom where there was another child. His name was Clint, where he was sleeping. So around 4 a.m., mind you, everybody had just gone to sleep very recently. Around 4 a.m., Jolene's mother, she first stated she woke up to use the restroom. However, she later changed that, stating that she woke up to a noise. She said she noticed that all the doors were open, and she ran to Bruce's room and woke him up, telling him that she thought there was someone in the house. So he grabbed his revolver and checked the house, but didn't find anyone. So he told his wife to go check on the kids and that he was going to go make coffee. Okay? There's a reason I said that like that. Now, Christine then screamed for help, stating that Jolene was nowhere to be found. So they called Jolene's father, Lindsay, who was at work because he worked the night shift, and he told them to call the police and that he was going to be on his way immediately. So at this point, I'm going to backtrack a little bit before anybody knew that anything had actually happened. Okay? So backtracking to around 3 a.m., there was an off-duty police officer. His name was Kevin. He had been driving by Papa Gallo's bar, and he seen John, the owner of the bar, was at the dumpster. So he stopped to talk to him, as sometimes police officers do, especially on night shift. Just want, hello, how's everything going? Anything strange going on? So while they were talking, Kevin, the police officer, he observed a brown Ford Fairmont driving kind of slow in front of them on Main Street. And he noticed the driver, who had short black hair. Now, the driver entered the north side of Papa Gallo's bar and takes the alleyway behind the bar, just off the rear of the car park. Now, it's important to note that this alleyway led right to Jolene's uncle's house. So about 15 minutes later, the car comes back up the road, but it now has 2 occupants who were later identified by the names of Steve and Alan. Now, interestingly, Alan used to date Jolene's mother, and he happened to be very close to Jolene. Now, Steve was Jolene's uncle on his mother's side, uncle by marriage. He had married Linda's sister, Ruthie. Now, also interestingly enough, Steve owned a brown Ford Fairmont car. So this brown Ford Fairmont was spotted by cleaning services in the hours after the disappearance. It was spotted on the street where Jolene's body was later found. That's important to note. The cleaning service people knew Steve, the owner of the car, and they confirmed that it was him in the car. Now, later on, at some point after Jolene's disappearance, Cassie, her sister, happened to be in the car with her Uncle Steve and his wife Ruthie, and he for some reason, took a longer route to where they were going that day, and it just happened to be the road that was directly connected with the spot where Jolene's body had been found. Okay? So, shortly after Jolene's disappearance, the community came together to search for her, and volunteers, Jolene's family, and police searched wooded areas in the county for more than a month. And unfortunately, on September 6th, 1997, two hikers discovered Jolene's naked and badly decomposed body on Bald Eagle Mountain along Route 554 in Armstrong Township. A forensic pathologist determined the cause of death to be a violent homicide. Now, although several suspects were interviewed, some believed Jolene's uncle Bruce Longnecker was her killer. The district attorney, Thomas Marino, who had identified Jolene's uncle as the person who strangled her or smothered her in his home, he based that identification on evidence he said was obtained from 2 grand juries and results of DNA tests and a hypnosis of 2 girls. I don't know who those 2 girls were. I couldn't find any information on that. I'm not sure that I believe that. You'll maybe later see why. But anyway, as I stated before, Jolene's parents, they were either divorced or separated. They weren't together. But I guess I don't know, whatever. But there were some people who had believed that Bruce, I don't know, once, repeatedly, I have no idea, stated that they believed he touched Jolene inappropriately. But Detective Kenneth Maines said that he had not seen any evidence that Bruce sexually abused Jolene. But unfortunately, Bruce took his own life on November 4th, 1997, a day before investigators were going to interview him. People can speculate. They can say he was guilty. He didn't want to go to jail. Other people can say that he couldn't handle being accused of something he didn't do. And I'm going to say right now that that's where I believe that's what I believe happened. I mean, I couldn't even imagine being accused of something like that. But anyway, you can make up your own mind when you hear everything. So Detective Kenneth Maines, he was asked, is Bruce a suspect? To which he answered yes, but I can say that my analysis of the case pointed me to a different suspect who is still alive and living in Lycoming County today. Now, in 2012, he received credible information on Jolene's case and followed up on it since it corroborated other information he had on the case. However, he was told by state police supervisors not to question anyone on the case and to instead send them to the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks. He said he worked side by side with Jolene's sister since 2012 to help solve the case, and that is where his loyalty is and always will be with families of the victims. So he says, did I listen to the state police? Absolutely not. He said my job was to take a second look at the case and give my unbiased opinion, and that is what I did. So now the district attorney, Thomas Marino, now is a congressman, said Kenneth Maines is entitled to his opinion, but unless he has discovered something revealing, he feels confident investigators zeroed in on the right person. Detective Kenneth Maines, he has a true crime show on the History Channel, and he now has a YouTube series called Unsolved, No More, and says he's still in communication with Jolene's family. I watched a lot of his stuff, but anyway, the leads that he developed on the case in 2012 unfortunately were only taken seriously at the time by District Attorney Linhart and Jolene's family. Still, he commended the Muncie Borough Police Department and State Police, who initially investigated the case in 1997, saying that they did an outstanding job. Now, as I just said before, sorry, I was intrigued by the fact that Kenneth had a YouTube channel, so I looked him up. I watched some of his stuff. Actually, I had seen some of his stuff before this case, but I forgot who he was. So anyway, I then found this story, and I did watch it. And I will say, if you haven't watched any of his stuff, please go check him out. He's fabulous. Like I said, it's called Unsolved No More. And watch this interview, because he has a whole lot more to say than what I'm telling you. So anyway, his boss asked him to go on an interview with him at the prison. It was unrelated to this particular case. However, Kenneth recognized the person's name as being related to someone possibly connected to this crime. He didn't tell his boss that, but he went, and in this interview on his channel, he showed the actual police report, and it read, "In February of 2015, I did accompany Chief County Detective William Weber to the Lycoming County Prison for his interview of David," and the last name was redacted. He said he didn't feel he had the right to say his last name, "regarding a letter that he sent to the district attorney's office unrelated to Jolene Witt's case. After the completion of that interview, I asked the following questions. Did your brother ever do anything really bad? Did your brother ever murder anyone? Do you know the name Jolene Witt?" David stated Alan, remember the name from the beginning, is his brother, and that his brother never did anything really bad. He doesn't know if his brother murdered anyone, and doesn't know anything about Jolene Witt. David's demeanor was normal until I asked the question about murder and Jolene Witt. He then began to stutter and stammer, which was witnessed by Detective Weber. I left the room and said nothing further. Now, Kenneth did mention the relationship of Jolene's parents, Linda and Lizzie, stating that there was previous violence in their relationship or whatever, ex-relationship, whatever. There were PFAs that had been issued, and there was an incident where Linda had pulled a gun on Lindsay. He showed a newspaper article showing this, and it stated that Linda Longnecker appeared at his home and began kicking and pounding on the door, and when he opened the door, she threatened him with a .25 caliber black Beretta. Lindsay grabbed her wrist. They struggled, and he grabbed her throat and held her in a headlock. Linda told him, "Go ahead and hit me so I can shoot you." He tossed the gun over the banister and onto the ground as Williamsport police were arriving. Linda was cited for disorderly conduct, and in the temporary protection order, Linda was told not to contact Lindsay and not to go to his home or enter his place of employment. Previous orders resulted in Lindsay being directed not to stalk, harass, or abuse Linda. In 1996, Linda was given custody of the children from 4 p.m. Wednesday to 4 p.m. Thursday and alternate weekends from 4 p.m. Friday until 4 p.m. Monday. She was to pick up the children at Muncie Elementary School when they were not in her custody. She was allowed to call them at 8 p.m. each night to talk with them. In a protection from abuse petition filed July 30th on behalf of her children, Linda stated that Lindsay threatened to kill her and her brother Bruce, who came to her assistance following an altercation. Linda's previous PFA orders were based on complaints of physical and sexual abuse, alleged harassment, and threats. According to Linda's complaints, Lindsay had a history of physical abuse against Linda since 1994. Court papers said he threatened numerous times prior to and since June 15th of 1994 to kill her if she left with the children. I don't know if any of that is why he had custody. I have no idea. I found nothing stating that, but again, it doesn't matter. So, in this interview, Detective Kenneth Maines interviewed Cassie, the older sister. She was older by 1 year, who's now obviously an adult. She said how the day before the disappearance, they had gone for visitation with their mother at their uncle's house, and that they liked going there because their mother let them do whatever they wanted, and their dad was very strict, so they liked going there and having the freedom that they had. In his video, he made a good point. We're going to go back to the beginning here a little bit. He made a good point at the fact that when Linda woke up Bruce to say she thought someone was in the house, that it was my immediate thought. The first news article I read, Bruce said, "Go check on the children. I'm going to make a pot of coffee." Now, the adults went to bed supposedly at 2 a.m. Somebody, Christine, I think it was, checked on the children at 3 a.m. And it's now 4 a.m. So you only got an hour or two of sleep. And at this point, he still had no idea that anybody was missing. You just cleared the house and found no strangers were in there, had been in there, whatever. But you're going to make a pot of coffee. You've had no sleep. You didn't know anybody was missing. Why would you suggest making a pot of coffee? Now, later in the video, Ken made a comment about Kevin, who was the off-duty police officer, saying there was a private investigator as well as some other people that he may have been the one responsible for Jolene's disappearance. Ken saying that Kevin, the police officer, could have been the one responsible. Why? The first indicator being, according to people, is that he was off duty and on his way home when he heard the call come over the dispatch radio. That call was being dispatched to the state police, and he intercepted that call and tells the county, I recognize the address. Is that the Longnecker residence? They said yes, and he said that he would respond to the call. So the question that people had was, why did he jump on the call if he was off duty? He probably had a long shift and probably wanted to go home. Now, the private investigator stated Kevin had a hero complex and that he's actually the one involved in the crime. Kevin, after this, went on to be arrested multiple times. I'm not sure why. Had nothing to do with the case, but I guess that just goes to show what type of person he was. Now, Kenneth Maines said that Kevin sent Kenneth multiple messages over the years, and Ken thinks that Kevin is carrying a heavy burden on him, not because he's responsible for the disappearance of Jolene, but because he was the first one there, and maybe he feels he could have done more. Now, Kenneth does say he disagrees with that, and he believes he did everything correctly, and he says Kevin's police reports were the best that he ever read. There was a part in Officer Kevin's report that he spoke with a guy named Gary. He said that the whole bunch, meaning the Longneckers, is strange. I asked what he meant, and he said that the Longneckers are strange people and that they keep very odd hours and have lots of different people living in the house at different times. He said that you never know who is living there from one week to the next. So then Ken reads the interview that Officer Kevin had with Alan. Back to the beginning. Alan says he knew Jolene since she was a little girl. She was the silent type, but always mischievous. She used to have the cutest little laugh. She was always playing around with other kids and him. And she was a sweet little girl. She was an all-around good kid. She never needed to be spanked. So then Ken asked, do you notice anything about this statement? Now, keep in mind, this interview was just a few hours after the disappearance. So yes, he is speaking about Jolene in the past tense. She had. So in the notes, he wrote that he had asked Alan to tell him what happened to Jolene, and Alan would not answer him. He just stared at the table and slouched over. Kevin asked Alan, is Jolene okay? Or Ken asked Alan, is Jolene okay? And Alan looked directly at him and said nothing. After a few minutes, he said, I hope so. So they then interviewed Steve, who was the guy that was with Alan that night, and Steve was not cooperative. And in one interview, he claimed after they got drunk at the bar, he supposedly told Alan that he didn't have enough gas money to take him home, which didn't make sense because they supposedly lived near each other. So he then claimed he didn't know where Alan went, and Steve claimed he went and slept in his car for a bit, and where he said he did that kind of lines up with a previous witness who seen Steve's car near there, which was, I believe, the cleaners who seen the car parked in that field. Allen later claimed some guy he didn't know his name took him home and that he drove a Thunderbird. So they were trying to give conflicting stories. The police report from the sewer worker states Dave stated while he was there, he observed a brown or tan Ford Futura being operated by a white male, 5'8", 200 pounds, stocky build, short, dark hair. He stated he thought the driver was acting nervous, and he kept looking in the back seat. He later said in a follow-up interview that he knew the driver from Turkey Hill Mini Market in Muncie. He said that he had met him while he was recovering from a motorcycle accident, and he said he sees the vehicle quite often as it's always passing by his house. So, police notes state the vehicle and the person description match Steve, and Steve did recently have a motorcycle accident. So, they make note when they had interviewed Allen, and when Allen got home that night, his girlfriend was there when he got home, and she stated he got home around 4:30 a.m. Now, there were actually 2 other people at his home that night, or that morning, who were sleeping on the living room floor when he got home, but they stated it was more like 6 or 6:30 a.m. when he got home. So then in this video, Ken Maines goes on to mention how Jolene's body was found nude, but she was so badly decomposed it couldn't really be determined how she died. So remember, the coroner's report said that she died by a brutal homicide. But there were no knife cuts or broken bones, no crushed bones. So he says that it seemed like the crime was a sexually motivated crime. He went back to the adults that were in the home, and he again mentioned Bruce and the fact that he only had 2 hours sleep and that he actually stayed up to make coffee. Now, Ken also made a good point that if it was a stranger who came into the house, why wasn't it Cassie that would have been taken instead of Jolene? Because remember I said in the beginning, pay attention to this. Cassie was the one who was sleeping on the sofa in the TV room, which was right by the front door. So why would a stranger walk into the house, bypass one child, not know what the rest of the house looked like, not know who else was in the house, and then take a different child? So I don't think it was a stranger. My belief is that it was Stephen Allen. That's my opinion. You can form your own opinion. I'd like to know what your opinion is and why. What are your reasons? What am I missing? Go check out that other YouTube channel, Unsolved No More. Check him out. He's great. He's wonderful. Check out this case. Come back and tell me what you think. But I believe it was Stephen Allen, and those SOBs are walking free on the face of this earth and not paying for their crime. So, that's all I got to say. And let me know what you think. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.